We go back to the outrageous invasion of Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago, the raid on Mar-a-Lago. And now the question is, why is the Justice Department desperately trying to criminalize the Presidential Records Act? All right. Joining me to talk about it, Andy McCarthy, former Assistant U.S. Attorney, National Review contributing editor, and Fox News contributor. Andy, welcome back. As always, your column this weekend on National Review Online was a blockbuster. I know we talked about it on radio, but we need to do more. First point is this investigation is far broader than just the mishandling of classified information. Can you tell us about that?
Well, yeah, Larry, I think that, people ask, what's the thing that changed from the time that President Trump and his representatives met with Justice Department people and FBI people in June? And I think the thing that's obviously changed is the Justice Department ratcheted up the January 6th investigation. Mm-hmm. So in late June, you have these two search warrants that are done on two of the lawyers who are connected to January 6th. Then there's some grand jury subpoenas served on Vice President Pence's people, grand jury subpoenas served on President Trump's White House counsel and Deputy White House counsel, Pat Cipollone and Patrick Philbin. And then the day after they do the Mar-a-Lago raid, a member of Congress walking with his family in Pennsylvania is given a search warrant and has to surrender his phone. So it seems to me that, it's very clear that Garland got a lot of criticism that he didn't seem to be moving aggressively enough on January 6th. They have stepped up their activity since then. And it's inconceivable to me that the guy they're mainly looking at on January 6th is President Trump. They search his place in the middle of all this activity, and we're supposed to believe that the search doesn't have anything to do with January 6th. I don't think that's possible.
That Scott Perry hit really was a tip-off. That's like the leading indicator, if you ask me.
Yeah, right? and I think
that's not a coincidence. That was the day after the Mar-a-Lago raid.
It's the day after, and I think the other thing that's very interesting here that hasn't gotten much play is they waited until Congress was not in session. Everybody goes hither and yon,
right?
Then they hit Mar-a-Lago like the Monday after that. Didn't they have their vote-a-rama on the big bill last weekend? Right?
Yes.
And then as soon as that was over, they did the Mar-a-Lago search, and then the next day they did the Perry subpoena. I don't think they would have sent FBI agents up to Capitol Hill on Congress's turf. I think they wait till they're gone, and then they can do what they want.
So then you're writing here in NRO, the warrant, however, is not limited to evidence of classified information crimes. Not even close. Anything nearby was also swept up. By the way, I was told today, was reported today, 3 of President Trump's passports were also taken in this sweep. And then after that, you go on to say, they are essentially expanding the Presidential Records Act, which is not a criminal statute. Tell us more about that. These points you're making have not been made in general. I don't think people understand what's cooking here.
So up until Watergate, presidential records were pretty much deemed to be the property of the president. And then we had the Watergate scandal, and a lot of that had to do with the disposition of Nixon's property, in particular the tapes. But in the aftermath of that, Congress said, we're going to change the presumption. So now presidential records are deemed to be the property of the United States, not the personal property of the president. But because they were breaking new ground, and back in the 70s, Larry, I don't think that it was like a knee-jerk reaction that we had to have a criminal statute for everything. It wasn't enough to have a statute. It has to be a criminal statute. So in the 70s, they didn't put, when they did the Presidential Records Act, they didn't put any criminal law provisions in it. And the importance of that is you only get a search warrant for crime. So to get a federal search warrant, you have to have probable cause of a crime.
Right.
So I think what they're trying to do, that one of the statutes that they cited in the warrant was this Section 2071 of the Penal Code, which deals with concealing and removing government records. And what they're now trying to do is kind of hook that statute up to the Presidential Records Act. So essentially, you have the prosecutors rewriting the Presidential Records Act so it now has criminal law provisions in it that it didn't have when Congress enacted it.
And you write in your National Review article, It amounts to the Justice Department fashioning a new crime for Donald Trump.
Well, they've never done it before. The presidential, we've had disputes over presidential records before.
Under what authority can they do this, Andy McCarthy?
Well, if they convince a court that 2071, that statute applies, and they did convince this court, at least they say now, okay, we have probable cause. And what they really want, Larry, I don't think they're looking to make a Presidential Records Act case on President Trump. And I don't even think they're looking to make a classified information case. They want the records back. For 2 years, the National Archives have been telling President Trump, we want the stuff back. That's our stuff, not your stuff. And I don't know why when the Justice Department got involved in that. It looks like the archives notified the Justice Department in around January of 2022. But they ratcheted this up into a criminal investigation. And I really don't think the Justice Department would have cared that much about it. We'll have to see what the classified information is. If it's that serious, I suppose that you could say they cared about that. But I think what they really care about is January 6th.
Well, I'm sure you're right. But the question here is, was there any probable cause for a criminal act? That's in the affidavit, in the application for the search warrant, which we may or may not ever see.
Well, if they, this is not the FISA situation. The problem with FISA is it's just about foreign surveillance, right? So if you get a FISA warrant, you may never see it because it's all classified. If they're doing a criminal investigation, once they charge him, that stuff gets turned over in discovery. And if somebody misled a federal court in getting it, we're going to find out about it.
But I just come back to this. West Virginia versus EPA says these government regulators cannot invent new laws. And I'm just going to assume the Justice Department is a regulator and they can't create new laws. So if the Presidential Records Act is not a criminal act, about a criminal act, how the heck can they do this?
Well, they're at the early stage of their investigation, so they've done a search warrant, right? If President Trump were to get charged with anything, he would be able to litigate the warrant, and then he could raise the claim that you're saying, that basically they didn't have the authority to do that. Now, what I think the Justice Department would come back and say is, well, there are criminal statutes that apply to classified information, but what I would then say if I were President Trump's lawyers would be, well, but that's not what you put in the warrant. They did cite those statutes, but the warrant allows them to take every scrap of paper that was generated in the 4 years of the Trump presidency. That's what it says. It's not narrowly targeted to classified information.
Doesn't include passports. Presidential passports classified, Andy McCarthy?
Not that I know of, but I'll tell you what, if they took a lot of stuff that they shouldn't have taken, that's going to redound to their detriment when a court looks at this and says, did they carefully, narrowly execute this in a way that...
Crazy. Outrageous. Yeah. Not your column. Your column is brilliant. This whole story is outrageous.
Thank you, Larry.
Many thanks to Andy McCarthy. All right.